There's a moment that often passes without notice. A dog sees you, and instead of rushing forward, instead of sound or movement, the body lengthens slowly. Front legs stretch. Back arches. The spine unfolds like a quiet exhale. This stretch is not laziness. It is not a habit. It is not a coincidence. In that small, silent movement, the dog is regulating emotion, calming excitement, softening attachment, preparing the nervous system for connection without overwhelm. Dogs do not greet the world with words. They greet it with posture, breath, and timing. When a dog stretches upon seeing you, something internal is happening first. Before joy, before closeness, before motion. It is the body choosing safety. The nervous system chooses balance. A quiet psychological signal that says, I recognize you and I am settling into this moment. Before movement, there is recognition. Before sound, there is awareness. A dog does not always greet what is familiar with speed or noise. Sometimes the body pauses, the eyes soften, and then, slowly, the front legs extend forward, the chest lowers, and the spine lengthens in a stretch that looks almost casual, ordinary enough to be overlooked. But this moment is not empty. When a dog stretches after seeing you, the action begins internally. The nervous system registers a known presence. Not a surprise, not a threat, something remembered, something expected. The body responds by creating space. Through muscle, breath, and posture, allow an emotion to pass through without spilling over. Stretching here is not preparation for play. It is not stiffness releasing. It is an emotional transition, a way for the dog to acknowledge recognition while staying grounded. Dogs experience the world as a series of sensory shifts. Smell changes first, then sound, then sight. By the time the stretch appears, recognition has already occurred. The body has decided that what is coming does not require defense or urgency. This is why the movement is slow. In canine emotional language, speed often belongs to uncertainty. Stillness belongs to safety. The stretch sits between the two, a gentle bridge from waiting to connection. There's restraint in this signal. The dog feels attachment, but does not rush to discharge it. Instead, the body regulates arousal, allowing excitement to settle into something quieter, something sustainable. The stretch also communicates inwardly. Muscles lengthen, breath deepens, and tension dissipates before closeness begins. This protects the dog from emotional flooding. It preserves balance. Seen from the outside, the gesture appears simple. Seen from within, it is precise. A self-chosen pause, a moment of emotional organization. The dog is not asking for attention. The dog is not performing. The dog is preparing to exist calmly in the presence of something meaningful. In this first signal, nothing is demanded. Nothing is rushed. Connection is acknowledged, not seized. This is where the story begins, not with action, but with regulation, not with excitement, but with quiet recognition. A body that knows. A nervous system that trusts. A stretch that says, this moment is safe enough to enter slowly. Long before the stretch appears in the present moment, the body has already been taught how to arrive there. Dogs do not invent emotional responses on their own. They absorb them through repetition, through the environment, through the quiet patterns that form when life feels predictable or when it does not. In early experiences, a dog learns whether recognition leads to overwhelm or safety, whether closeness arrives gently or all at once, whether attention feels steady or unpredictable. These early emotional conditions shape how the nervous system prepares for connection later in life. When consistency exists, the body learns to be patient. It learns that presence does not require urgency, that attachment can be held without spilling outward. Stretching becomes one of the ways this lesson lives in the muscles. This is not conscious memory. It is procedural memory, stored in posture, timing, and breath. The dog does not remember moments. The body remembers patterns. A dog raised in emotionally steady surroundings often develops transitional behaviors. Small pauses between noticing and engaging. A stretch, a sit, a slow approach. These moments are not hesitation. They are regulations learned through safety. In less predictable environments, the body may have learned something different. Recognition might trigger alertness, quick movement, or heightened arousal. The absence of a stretch does not indicate less attachment, only a different emotional history. The stretch, when it appears, reflects a body that expects time, a nervous system that believes it will not be rushed away from itself. It also reflects trust learned through repetition. Seeing someone and remaining calm requires belief. Belief that closeness will not overwhelm, that separation will not be abrupt, that the emotional rhythm of the relationship is stable. Over time, these beliefs settle into the body. They stop needing thought. They become automatic responses, expressed quietly through movement. This is how attachment becomes visible without effort. The dog is not recalling the past. The dog is living inside what the past taught the body to expect. The stretch is simply the present expression of that learning. What looks like a small gesture carries the weight of many moments before it. Moments of being seen without pressure. Moments of waiting without loss. Moments where emotion was allowed to rise and fall safely. In this way, the stretch is not about today alone. It is a continuation of an emotional education that taught the body how to greet familiarity without tension, a body shaped by predictability, a posture shaped by patience, a signal that emerged because safety once stayed long enough to be learned. Beneath the visible movement of a stretch, something quieter is unfolding. Not thought, not intention, regulation. A dog's nervous system is constantly scanning the environment, measuring safety through sensation rather than language. Before emotion is felt as excitement or calm, it is first registered as arousal, an internal rising or settling of energy. When a familiar presence enters view, arousal naturally increases. Recognition carries feeling, but the body must decide what to do with that energy. Stretching is one way the nervous system answers. The movement lengthens muscles and deepens breath, subtly shifting the body away from activation and toward balance. It invites the parasympathetic system, the branch associated with rest and safety, to come forward without shutting down engagement. This is not stillness born of fear. It is not suppression. It is a controlled release. Dogs who stretch in moments of recognition are allowing emotion to move through the body without letting it overflow. Excitement is acknowledged but softened. Attachment is present but contained. This balance matters. Too much arousal can fragment the connection. Too little can flatten it. The stretch occupies a middle space, where presence remains intact. The nervous system, in these moments, is not reacting. It is responding, choosing a rhythm that keeps the body open rather than defensive. The timing is precise. Stretching happens after recognition, but before engagement. This sequence allows the body to arrive fully, rather than arrive already overwhelmed. There is intelligence in this timing, an intelligence shaped not by logic, but by lived sensation. For dogs, emotional health is not about intensity. It is about flow, the ability to feel without becoming overtaken, to connect without losing internal balance. The stretch supports this flow. It redistributes tension. It slows breathing. It gives the body permission to stay present. Seen from the outside, it looks passive. From within, it is active regulation. A dog that stretches is not delaying connection. The dog is protecting it. In this quiet physiological adjustment, there is no message being sent outward. The communication is internal first. The body says to itself, "This is safe enough to remain soft." Only after that message is received does movement continue. The nervous system has spoken, not loudly, not urgently, but clearly. Balance before closeness. Regulation before approach. A body that listens to itself before stepping forward. There is emotion in the dog at the moment of recognition. That much is certain. But emotion does not always move outward. Sometimes it stays inside, contained, shaped, and held with surprising restraint. Dogs are often imagined as creatures of immediate expression. Quick tails, fast steps, open mouths. Yet, many dogs learn another way of being. One where feeling is present, but not discharged all at once. The stretch belongs to this quieter language. When a dog stretches after seeing you, the body is negotiating between desire and calm. The impulse to move closer exists. So does the impulse to remain steady. Stretching becomes a middle ground, a way to acknowledge feeling without surrendering to it. This is not emotional suppression. Suppression tightens a body. It shortens breath. Stretching does the opposite. It lengthens. It opens. It allows emotion to circulate without forcing it into action. Over time, dogs adapt their expressions to what the environment can hold. In emotionally predictable spaces, restraint becomes possible. The dog learns that the connection will remain available even if it is approached slowly. So the body chooses delay, not denial. This delay is protective. Excitement that moves too quickly can fragment attention. Calm that arrives too suddenly can feel like withdrawal. The stretch allows the dog to pace its own emotional arrival. In this pacing, there is maturity not as a concept, but as a state of regulation. The nervous system has learned how to stay within its own limits. Some dogs carry large feelings. Attachment runs deep. Recognition stirs memory and anticipation all at once. Without a regulating pause, these sensations can overwhelm the body. Stretching creates space for these sensations to settle. It turns intensity into presence. What appears outwardly as inactivity is actually a moment of emotional management. The dog is not disengaged. The dog is organizing itself. In this way, stretching becomes a form of emotional intelligence that requires no awareness, no intention. It is simply the body doing what it has learned helps it stay whole. The dog holds a feeling without tension, holds attachment without urgency, holds recognition without losing balance. This quiet holding is not an absence. It is fullness contained. And when movement finally follows, it is not driven by excess. It is guided by steadiness. The stretch ends. The body settles. Emotion remains, calm, intact, and ready to meet the moment without rushing through it. At some point, attention shifts, not in the dog, but in the observer. What was once dismissed as a simple habit begins to carry weight. The stretch is no longer invisible. It becomes a moment worth noticing, a pause that holds more than it first appeared to. This change does not alter the dog's behavior. The dog continues as before, stretching, settling, moving forward in its own time. The meaning changes only because perception deepens. The stretch is no longer interpreted as a delay. It is understood as preparation, not resistance, but care. In noticing this, something subtle happens. The moment lengthens. The silence feels intentional rather than empty. What once passed quickly now invites stillness. There is no instruction here, no correction, only recognition. The observer begins to see that dogs do not always rush toward what they love. Sometimes they arrive gently to protect the emotional field between them and what they recognize. This realization carries a quiet humility. It reveals how often subtle emotional signals are overlooked because they do not demand attention. They do not announce themselves. They simply exist. When the stretch is seen clearly, it becomes a marker of trust. The dog believes the moment will wait. That closeness will not vanish if it is approached slowly. This belief changes the emotional tone of the interaction, even if nothing outwardly changes at all. The space between noticing and engagement becomes meaningful. The dog is no longer perceived as pausing without reason. The pause itself becomes a message, a body that feels safe enough to regulate openly, a presence that does not need to rush toward certainty. The shift in understanding does not require action. It requires patience of perception. The dog remains the same. The behavior remains the same. But the meaning now rests in the space between movement and stillness. And in that space, the stretch transforms from background detail into a quiet expression of emotional awareness that was always there, waiting to be seen. Safety for a dog is not declared. It is sensed. It lives in timing, in predictability, in the absence of pressure. It is felt not through instruction, but through repetition, through moments that unfold without urgency or demand. When a dog stretches upon recognition, it reflects a relationship where emotional safety has become familiar enough to be assumed. The body does not brace. It does not rush. It does not freeze. It settles. This settling is quite evidence of trust. The dog's nervous system has learned that recognition does not require immediate performance. That closeness does not need to be earned through speed or intensity. that the moment will hold, even if approached slowly. Safety like this is cumulative. It forms when emotional rhythms remain consistent over time, when arrivals are not overwhelming, when departures are not abrupt, when presence feels emotionally predictable, even in silence. In such conditions, the dog no longer needs to stay alert at the threshold of connection. The stretch replaces vigilance. Regulation replaces anticipation. This does not mean the dog feels less. It means the dog feels secure enough to feel fully without rushing to resolve that feeling. The body, in stretching, is not asking for reassurance. It expresses that reassurance already exists internally. The environment has proven itself steady often enough that the dog no longer needs to test it. There is no exchange happening here. No signal meant to instruct or influence. The stretch is not communication outward. It is a reflection inward, a body that expects gentleness, a nervous system that trusts the pace of the moment. Safety without words allows the dog to remain emotionally present without guarding itself. The stretch becomes a visible sign of that unguarded state. Nothing is demanded. Nothing is negotiated. The dog simply enters the moment as it is, calm, aware, and intact. And in that quiet entry, something profound is revealed. Emotional security does not announce itself. It shows up as easy, as slowness, as a body that feels no need to hurry toward what it already trusts will remain. In the end, the stretch asks for nothing. It does not demand a response. It does not seek confirmation. It unfolds quietly, complete in itself. This is what makes it an expression of trust. A dog that stretches upon recognition is not trying to secure closeness. The body already believes closeness exists. The moment does not need to be captured quickly because it is not perceived as fragile. Trust, in dogs, rarely appears as devotion in motion. More often, it appears as a restraint, as confidence that what matters will wait. The stretch carries this confidence in its slowness. The body lengthens rather than leans forward. Breath deepens rather than quickens. The dog remains present without pulling the moment toward itself. There is loyalty in this stillness. Not the loud loyalty of pursuit, but the quiet loyalty of emotional stability. The kind that does not need to prove itself through action. Dogs who trust do not cling to recognition. They settle into it. The stretch becomes a ritual of arrival, one that honors the body's need to remain balanced, even in moments of connection. It says that emotion can exist without urgency, that attachment does not have to be dramatic to be deep. In this final reflection, the stretch stands as a reminder of how dogs often love, not through insistence, but through regulation, not through noise, but through presence. What is offered is subtle. A body that feels safe enough to be open, a nervous system that believes the moment will hold. The stretch ends. The dog moves forward, or sometimes does not. Either way, the meaning remains. Trust is expressed through patience. Loyalty expressed through calm. Connection expressed through silence. And in that silence, something enduring becomes visible. The dog has already arrived emotionally, long before any movement needed to follow.